Now, though, let's hear from John Harkin, the Senior Policy Advisor at Ceemet, who's going to talk to us about what businesses in the EU think about the deal. So thank you very much, John.
Thank you for that, Hilary. So many thanks for that, Hilary, and many thanks for the invitation to come and speak here today on behalf of Ceemet. So perhaps I could begin with a brief introduction to Ceemet. So Ceemet is the European Employers Organization representing the metal, engineering and technology-based industries in Europe. That is suggesting that we represent around 50% of European manufacturing, representing the automotive, mechanical engineering and fabricated metal products, technology products, optical products also. Representing around 200,000 companies across Europe and 22 member countries. I suppose at this point it's pertinent to mention that a number of those countries are in fact third countries to the European Union. So here I'm thinking about Norway, Switzerland, Turkey, Australia. So Ceemet has a long history of working with third countries from the European Union, which is, I suppose, a point to make now. Representing around 35 million direct and indirect jobs. That's 17.1 million at last count direct jobs. And we're a recognized social partner at the European level. What that means is that we are consulted by the European Commission on certain topics before any other trade association or business association this happens with them. So we have a sort of an in beforehand on certain topics. And equally, when it comes to some of our lobbying topics in Brussels, we work directly with our trade union counterparts, and there we can sort of bring extra weight to our messages where we agree. When it comes to our internal workings, we have a future relationship working group at Ceemet, which has been in place since before 2016. And that has stewarded, managed a lot of the output which we have had over those years. We equally have a much communication and policy from Ceemet on the future relationship between the EU and the UK. I give the example of from December of last year, 2020, we've had 4 statements, press statements, one of those being the one to welcome the deal, but saying that industry needed time to analyze its contents. And from a policy perspective, then we have had 2 position papers in 2020 dealing with the topics that we wanted to see in the deal. We also have an ongoing dialogue with the Presidency of the European Council. Now, that's the institution which is made up of the member states of the European Union, and every 6 months that institution has a rotating presidency. It's currently Portugal. It was Germany before this. And as Ceemet, we have an ongoing dialogue with those presidencies because those are the people who chair, who convene the meetings in the European Council. So we have an ongoing dialogue with those. Also with the Commission and with the Parliament. We've had meetings with Michel Barnier and his team during the negotiations. Equally with MEP called David McAllister, who is the coordinator of the European Parliament and their work in this area. And very recently, we've had the head of the Irish Liberal delegation to the European Parliament at our Board of Directors meeting subsequent to the deal being agreed. He gave us his take on that. So if I could maybe move on a bit to what Ceemet members have in this short time since the deal has been agreed, been saying. Look, I think the agreement of this deal has brought to an end months of speculation across Europe on this issue. And what our members have been calling for months and years now is clarity and certainty. And I think that's what they have gotten now. They can plan for the future with that certainty and clarity. Members have welcomed the deal. I think that's evident from the majority of the business community, because the alternative was to be disastrous. Here I take the example of 10% on automotive products, 10% tariff. So our members have certainly welcomed this deal, but for them, it's only a starting point. You know, this is a unique trade agreement in itself, in the fact that it has been negotiated to manage divergence rather than to gain convergence. And it's also important to point out that in this trade deal, there's a political aspect to it that it's not there in many other trade deals. But as I said, from a Ceemet perspective, this is only the beginning. This needs to not be the end of the future relationship between the EU and the UK. Of course, this is a close partnership and relationship which needs to be built on from this point. If I could maybe talk to perhaps one or two of the topics that our members have raised. So one of the topics that have been raised by our members is that of social security coordination. In this context, relative to what the outcome could have been, we were rather positive with what was agreed. Now it is possible for workers to remain subject to their home social security system for up to 24 months, which is good. However, that their member state needs to be explicit. They need to state that they want to be part of certain lists within the agreement. So in fact, the TCA provides for a framework rather than, and it's up to the member states then to look at the specific just the exact rules. On mutual recognition of professional qualifications, this is an issue which is it's a big issue for our membership. Here, unfortunately, this was not part of the deal. What has been agreed is similar to what the EU has agreed in previous FTAs. I could take the example of CETA here. It essentially establishes the possibility for regulators and industry bodies to get together and agree these mutual recognition of professional qualifications in the future. However, there will be no new agreements on day one. We think from a Ceemet perspective, there is a clear need now for both UK and EU qualifications bodies to get together and propose mutual recognition in the future. I suppose on those two last points on social security coordination and on MRPQs, as we have reduced travel due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, I think a lot of the issues around these two topics have yet to be seen. So we will be following those closely as Ceemet going forward. If I could move on to the EU and what's happening here in Brussels. When it comes to the ratification of the deal, as you all know very well, this deal was agreed, went down to the wire. It was agreed late in December. So therefore, the European Council have had a chance to agree this deal. However, the European Parliament have not. It's a much longer process within the European Parliament to agree the deal. So that process needs to now happen subsequent to what happened in December. And subsequent to that, the Council will then lead a final agreement once the European Parliament have had their consent vote. So the European Parliament have until February to give their consent. And if they have not consented to the deal before the end of February, there will have to be an extension of the provisional application of the deal. So it's only provisionally applied now until the end of February, but the Parliament would like perhaps up until the end of March to agree the deal. So therefore, there will most likely need to be an extension of that provisional application. Voting on the 28th of February would be possible. It would be possible to have a extraordinary, what's called plenary session of the European Parliament. However, that could be tricky to organize at short notice. What is more likely is that it will happen during the March plenary session of the Parliament, which happens at the beginning of March. Again, there remains a slight possibility for February, but it's much more likely to happen in March. What happens in the committees, or what is happening in the committees currently, is that the Foreign Affairs and International Trade Committees, which are the lead committees in the European Parliament on this topic, are working alongside other what are called associated committees, so environmental committees, industry committees, employment committees, etc., to prepare a decision, a consent decision to go in front of the plenary. And also in parallel to that, the political groups, so the centre-right, the centre-left, the Liberals, etc., as you all know them well in the UK, there's similar vein here in Brussels. They sit in political groups, and they will then have a draft resolution which will be added to that consent vote, and that will all be voted in the plenary. So the Foreign Affairs and International Trade Committee have had their first meeting last week, where they have welcomed the deal. They have called it, albeit a thin deal, but they have welcomed the deal, and have looked for further powers for the Parliament in monitoring the deal going forward. So they're welcoming it, but they're looking for more powers for them going forward. As I mentioned earlier, Ceemet are in close cooperation and close consultation with the Parliament on this topic. So that's something we will continue following through their subsequent meetings, and also all the way up to the plenary, whether that be in March or in February of this year. So that's a bit of a brief overview of what's happening in Brussels and from a Ceemet perspective. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Equally, you can see my contact details on the screen in front of you.
Thank you very much, John. That was really, really interesting. I think what we'll probably do is we'll close it there for today. There are quite a few questions that are still to be answered. But they're quite detailed. Most of them are around the rules of origin, and actually, to be honest, most of them have sort of been answered in the questions that Fergus has already answered. They're kind of a lot of the same issue around manufacturing something in the UK, whether or not it's been processed enough to qualify for zero tariff or not. So I think all we'll say to everybody is thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope it's been helpful. Please don't forget to register for our next roadshow, which is a drill down into business travel and movement of people, which is on the 28th of January at 12 noon until 1:30 p.m. Aaron has helpfully put that into the chat now, so you can cut and paste that and hopefully register immediately. And the next session the week after will be on rules of origin, so we'll be putting all those details out to you in your follow-up pack. So I think it just remains to say thank you very much again for joining us today, and we'll hopefully see you on the 28th. So thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.